All right, next important battle is the Battle of Kings Mountain. This actually took place in North Carolina. You can see here's Cherokee County, here in the corner of the state. Here's Charlotte. Kings Mountain is right here. So not too far from Charlotte. It's kind of on the border of North and South Carolina. This was a colonial victory. It happened on October 7th, 1780. And basically, the British and a large group of loyalist supporters from South Carolina formed an army, General Cornwallis's army, and Ferguson was kind of leading the command, leading the charge. And their plan was to come up from South Carolina and attack here in North Carolina, where there were several patriots that were waiting. So the British positioned themselves on Kings Mountain while the patriots charged the hill. Remember, the British had the top spot on the hill, so they should be able to conquer the Patriots a lot quicker. But as the Patriots charged the hill, they proved that they had lethal marksmanship. They were good fighters, and they killed several British soldiers. At which point, Ferguson, the man leading the British charge, decided he didn't want to surrender, as he said, to a band of banditti. So he's basically calling them names. He's insulting them, like, I'll be darned if I surrender to this group of fools. So he leads a suicidal charge down the mountain, basically. He just takes off from the mountain, yelling, screaming, ready to attack, and he is literally cut down in a hail of bullets. He's just slaughtered as he goes down the hill. Some of his men, seeing him die, decide they're ready to surrender as well. And typically, when you surrender, the battle stops. Well, when they tried to surrender, they were killed as well in cold blood by the frontiersmen. So the men of North Carolina said, no, we are tired of the British being here in our state, of all this British control. We are not going to let you surrender and just walk away. And so they were angry, they killed. And so for the wounded count, the Tories, remember that's the British side, there were 157 that died, 163 wounded, and 698 captured. And as far as the Patriots, 28 were killed and 60 wounded. So it was a vast difference. The Battle of Cowpens happened in Cowpens, South Carolina, not far from Kings Mountain. This happened January 17th, 1781, and it's considered a turning point of the Revolutionary War in the southern colonies. Remember, there were only a handful of battles in the South, and this was an important one. So the British had been winning several battles throughout the Carolinas, and American morale was low in the South. They didn't really see a point in fighting anymore. They just kept seeing the British winning, and they were ready to give up. But for this battle, the Colonials had a new plan. Again, they're still going to line up in their 3 rows, but this time, and it could be more rows, the front line would fire at the British soldiers. And it used to be they would fire. If you got killed, you just smush together more and keep marching. But instead, they would fire, then run to the back of the line. Then the second line would set forward, fire, then run to the back of the line. Now, when the British saw them running to the back of the line, they didn't realize they were running to the back of the line. It would look like those soldiers are retreating, like they're scared and they're running away. So the British kept thinking, we've got them where we want them. And they keep pushing on and they keep firing until they realize they're just meeting up with a stronger line. Because even if you've already fired and you're now in the 5th line again, by the time you get up to the front again, you're stronger, you're rested, you're ready. And so it was an easy defeat. The colonists took over the British fairly quickly. It lasted just under an hour, and it had a huge impact on the war. The Battle of Guilford Courthouse also happened in North Carolina, March 15th, 1781, and it's considered one of the largest battles in the South during the Revolutionary War. And they used the same strategy that they saw at Cowpens. They saw what a success it was. They continued to try what they had tried before: fire, run to the back of the line, next line goes. And this battle, again, only lasted about 90 minutes. It was fairly quick. The Americans actually retreated and the British won at the end of this one, so it was a little different. But here's why it's so important. The British lost so many soldiers during that battle that it led them to their defeat in the war. They basically realized that they can't keep winning like this. And some of the British generals actually said that if this is how we're going to win, we're going to lose the war. We're losing too many men. Nathaniel Greene, who was a colonist, he said his plan was to wear down the British just a little bit at a time. Even if they lose, if we can get rid of them a little bit at a time. And so he's quoted as saying, "We fight, get beat, rise, and fight again," which kind of shows the American spirit that we don't give up. The Battle of Yorktown. This happened October 10th, 1781 in Yorktown, Virginia, right down here. It was the last great battle of the American Revolutionary War. And this is actually where the British Army surrendered. And the British government started saying, like, okay, we've got to end this war. We've got to be done. The British Army was outnumbered. They were surrounded at Yorktown. The colonists had all converged all around them. And the battle lasted for 11 days, 11 grueling days. And finally, on the 11th day, the British general waved the white flag, the surrender flag. And originally, kind of a slap in the face to the colonists, he tried to formally surrender to the French, but they wouldn't allow it. They kind of said, no, this battle's not between us. You need to surrender to your colonists. So he went over to George Washington and started making demands. General Cornwallis did, saying, like, okay, if I surrender, I need this, 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 this. And George Washington was not having it. He was like, no, if you surrender to me. I'm in charge here. And again, he kept trying to argue it. And so the American troops were like, okay, let's get ready to attack. And George Washington starts commanding his men to prepare for the next attack. And Cornwallis realizes, like, this dude's not playing. And so he agrees to surrender to the terms that George Washington had set forth. So on October 19th, 1781, General Cornwallis signed the British surrender, and this document's called the Articles of Capitulation. And around 8,000 British troops surrendered in Yorktown. So that's not the entire British Army, but it's enough of the British Army for the British Parliament and British government to start think, like, okay, if 8,000 men just surrendered, we're definitely going to lose this war. We need to get out of here. And so finally, we have the Treaty of Paris. This is the official peace treaty between the United States and Britain. It ended the American Revolutionary War. This is actually a copy of the document that ended the war. It was signed on September 3rd, 1783, which, if you notice, that's a year and a half after Yorktown. So it took a lot of time for the colonists and the British to agree on the terms of the treaty. It was negotiated formally in Paris, France. That's why it's called the Treaty of Paris, by 4 men that were representatives of their government. So the United States sent John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and a man named John Jay. And Britain sent David Hartley, who was a member of Parliament. And the Congress of the Confederation, that's now the United States, ratified the treaty, signed off on it on January 14th, 1784. It was official. They all agreed to the terms. King George III finally agreed to the terms on April 9th, 1784. That's actually 5 weeks after he was supposed to. There was like a deadline to make it official, but nobody was complaining. They were just thankful that he finally signed it. And it had 2 major points that both parties had to agree to. The first was Britain had to recognize that the 13 colonies were free and independent states. So Britain no longer had any claim on the land or the government in the Americas. And the second major point was the boundaries of the United States would allow for Western expansion. Remember, with the Proclamation of 1763, Britain had said you couldn't settle west of the Appalachian Mountains, and now the colonists were saying, we no longer have a boundary from you guys. We can go as far west in this country as we want or dare to explore, because it would have been scary for them, but as far as we dare to explore, it is ours. And Britain had to agree to that. So that sets the stage for Americans being able to expand and make it one of the largest countries in the world.